Without these important secrets, soldiers during World War II would never have survived. You can't even imagine what they had to do to come back from the war alive. These inhuman conditions gave rise to remarkable ingenuity, turning everyday objects into tools for survival. Heroism was evident not only in attacks, but also in the quiet, daily struggle against circumstances, where resourcefulness became the main weapon. Watch the video to the end, and you'll learn how a regular can of condensed milk could replace a field kitchen, and why a simple soldier's scarf was worth its weight in gold. I will reveal the best-kept secret of frontline life. The standard ration of a soldier in any army was based on canned food, stewed meat, canned fish, condensed milk. All of this was enclosed in sturdy tin cans that had to be opened somehow, often in the field under enemy fire. This is where a simple can opener turned from a kitchen tool into a real survival weapon. The American Army P-38 knife was a true masterpiece of minimalism. This tiny folding piece of metal weighed only a few grams and easily fit on a lanyard with a dog tag, but with it, you could easily open any can. Soldiers found dozens of other uses for it. They cleaned their rifles with it, used it as a screwdriver, and scraped mud off their boots. Losing such a knife was a real tragedy. Its versatility made it one of the most valuable items in a soldier's backpack, more important than many items of standard equipment. Soviet soldiers often used simple knives that came with canned food or made do with a bayonet knife. The ability to quickly and safely open a can without cutting oneself or spilling its precious contents was a basic skill. The speed of eating, and as a result, the mobility of the unit depended on it. German soldiers also had their own standard openers built into folding knives. But in trench warfare, they often had to improvise. Bayonets, entrenching shovels, or even two stones were used to rub the edge of the can until a hole was made. The process of eating was not just a way to satisfy hunger, but a whole ritual, a brief moment of peaceful life. The opportunity to eat hot food from a freshly opened can boosted morale. It was a small island of stability in a world of chaos and destruction. Canned food not only fed, but also healed. For example, British soldiers' rations included a lot of jam. The sweet product provided quick energy, and the jar in which it was stored could be used to make a heater or even an improvised stove. The story of the can opener in war is a story about how a small and insignificant detail can be the key to survival. It shows how important it was to be prepared for the little things in a soldier's life. After all, in war, there are no little things when it comes to food. We would be very interested to hear your opinion. What other simple everyday items do you think could have been indispensable at the front? Write about it in the comments. Want to know a secret that will change your perception of soldier food? The basis of any soldier's untouchable supply was crackers or biscuits. This product was extremely nutritious, light, did not spoil for years, and could withstand any transportation conditions. But these advantages came at the price of hardness, for which soldiers nicknamed them nails or armor-piercing. It was practically impossible to bite through a standard army biscuit without risking breaking your teeth. Therefore, soldiers showed remarkable ingenuity to make this product edible. The easiest way was to soak it in water, tea, or soup. After a few minutes in hot liquid, the biscuit turned into an edible porridge. It was not the most exquisite dish, but it provided the necessary calories. Often, canned meat or condensed milk was added to this porridge to improve the taste in some way. Another method was to crush the biscuits. They were crushed with a rifle butt, a stone, or a sapper's shovel, turning them into flour. This flour was then used to thicken soups or mixed with water and fried on the lid of a pot to make a kind of pancake. American soldiers received several types of biscuits, including sweet ones, in their K ration. They were slightly softer but still required pre-processing. They were eaten with jam or peanut butter, which were also included in the ration. German Knäckebrot, or crisp bread, was part of the Wehrmacht's ration. It was more fragile than the Allied biscuits, but just as dry. It was eaten with margarine, cheese, or ersatz honey made from beets. Rye crackers were widely used in the Soviet army. They were also soaked in boiling water or added to trench soup, a broth made from water, onions, and any other available ingredients. This simple dish saved thousands of soldiers from starvation. Crackers were not just food, but a strategic resource. They could be eaten on the go in the brief moments of calm between battles. They did not require preparation, which was critically important in the context of an offensive or retreat. Despite all the inconveniences, soldiers appreciated this iron ration. It guaranteed that even when completely cut off from the field kitchen, a soldier would not go hungry. It was simple but reliable food for survival. Crackers and biscuits became a symbol of the harsh soldier's diet. They remind us that in war, food is primarily fuel, not pleasure. But what if I told you that even a sweet treat could be turned into field kitchen fare? Read on to the next chapter to find out how condensed milk was turned into a heater. What I'm about to show you is banned in 12 countries. Condensed milk was one of the most popular foods in the Soviet and American armies. This sweet, high-calorie food was a real treat amid the monotonous frontline diet. But soldiers appreciated it for more than just that. An empty can of condensed milk was a universal resource. Thanks to its size and durability, it became the basis for many soldiers' inventions. The most famous of these was the trench heater, or Hindenburg candle, as the Germans called it during World War I. To make it, any combustible material was poured into an empty can: diesel fuel, fuel oil, waste oil, or melted fat. A wick made of twisted rags was placed inside. This design produced an even, almost smokeless flame that could burn for several hours. This improvised lamp not only illuminated the dark dugout, but also provided a little warmth. Its flame could be used to heat a mug of tea or warm up canned food. For a soldier frozen in a damp trench, it was a real lifesaver. A condensed milk can could also be turned into a mug, an ashtray, or a container for storing small items. Craftsmen even assembled a kind of wash basin from several cans and wire. The soldiers' ingenuity knew no bounds. The condensed milk itself was also used for more than just its intended purpose. It was added to tea or coffee instead of scarce sugar. Mixing condensed milk with crushed crackers resulted in a nutritious and delicious dessert reminiscent of a potato cake. American soldiers often received condensed milk in tubes, which was very convenient in the field. It could be eaten on the go without getting your hands dirty. This product provided a quick energy boost during long marches or before an attack. Pilots used condensed milk as a high-calorie food that was easy to consume in flight. It was part of the emergency ration and could sustain the pilot's strength in the event of a forced landing in enemy territory. The history of condensed milk in war is an example of how one product could serve dozens of different functions. It was a treat, fuel, and building material. This is vivid proof that in survival conditions, anything can take on new, unexpected value. This sweet product became a symbol of small joys during the war. It reminded soldiers of home and peaceful life, providing them not only with calories but also with hope. What if everything you were taught about food was outdated? Total war required total resource conservation. In Germany, which was under economic blockade, this led to the flourishing of ersatz products, substitutes that were supposed to replace scarce natural products. The most famous example was ersatz coffee. It was made from anything that could give it a dark color and bitter taste: roasted acorns, chicory, barley, and beets. This drink did not contain caffeine, but it allowed soldiers to warm up and create the illusion of a morning ritual. Ersatz bread was also a product of food engineering. Due to a shortage of rye and wheat, potato powder, pea or bean flour, and sometimes even sawdust were added to the flour. This bread was heavy and not very tasty, but it provided the army with the necessary amount of calories. Butter was replaced with margarine, which was made from various vegetable and animal fats. Ersatz honey was made from sugar beets, and ersatz sausage was made from soybeans, peas, and a small amount of low-quality meat. Wehrmacht soldiers treated such products with undisguised sarcasm. In their letters and diaries, they often complained about the quality of food. However, the supply system worked, and the army as a whole did not experience such severe hunger as in World War I. The production of substitutes was based on scientific principles. Entire institutes worked on creating new recipes that would allow them to feed a multi-million-strong army using a minimum of scarce resources. It was a real battle between chemists and technologists. Even chocolate was a substitute. The famous Coca-Cola contained large amounts of caffeine extracted from cola nuts and was intended as an energy stimulant for pilots and tank crews. But its taste was different from real chocolate. Substitute products were not only used by the German army. In the USSR, various substitutes were also used during difficult times. For example, carrots were used to make carrot tea, which was supposed to compensate for vitamin deficiencies. The history of ersatz products is a grim reminder of what a state has to resort to in conditions of total war. It shows how far attempts to deceive nature and one's own stomach can go. It was a diet based on illusion. But even in these conditions, soldiers did not lose heart, coming up with ways to improve the taste of substitute food. They added captured condensed milk to ersatz coffee and wild herbs and roots to tasteless soup. Do you think the creation of such products can be considered a scientific achievement? Or was it just deception? But even the most skillful substitutes were useless without clean water. In the next chapter, you will learn how soldiers obtained and disinfected water in the field. With a monotonous canned diet and a shortage of fresh vegetables and fruits, scurvy and other vitamin deficiencies became a serious threat. The command of all armies understood this danger and tried to combat it centrally. But once again, the soldiers' ingenuity played a key role. One of the main sources of vitamin C at the front was pine needles. Soldiers, especially in wooded areas, brewed spruce or pine needles to make a bitter but very healthy drink. This simple recipe, known since ancient times, saved thousands of soldiers from scurvy. Another important resource was wild plants. Experienced soldiers, especially those from rural areas, knew which herbs, berries, and roots were edible. Nettles, sorrel, wild onions, and quinoa all went into the soldiers' mess kits, enriching soups and porridges with vitamins and minerals. In spring and summer, gathering forage became an important part of soldiers' daily life. It was not only a way to diversify their diet, but also a kind of meditative activity that allowed them to distract themselves from the horrors of war. Every mushroom or handful of berries found was a small victory. The U.S. Army paid special attention to the issue of vitamins. Dry rations included powdered lemonade and orange juice, concentrates enriched with ascorbic acid. These drinks were not only healthy, but also very thirst-quenching. The Soviet command also tried to provide the army with vegetables. Each unit had its own subsidiary farms where potatoes, cabbage, and onions were grown. However, it was extremely difficult to deliver fresh vegetables to the front lines. Often, the only source of vitamins was captured supplies or help from the local population. A captured German warehouse with canned fruit or a bucket of potatoes shared by a peasant woman in a liberated village was a real treat. Soldiers learned to preserve the gifts of nature. They dried the berries they picked and salted mushrooms in barrels if possible. These preparations helped them survive the long and hungry winter. The fight against vitamin deficiency was a quiet and invisible war that was waged daily. It required knowledge, observation, and discipline. Every soldier had to become a bit of a botanist and nutritionist. This hunt for vitamins shows how closely soldiers' lives were connected to nature. The ability to use its gifts was as important a skill as the ability to shoot. Those who knew the forest and the field best survived. Want to know a secret that will change your life? The official ration was only one aspect of a soldier's diet. An equally important role was played by the unofficial economy based on trophies, bartering, and parcels from home. This system made it possible to significantly diversify the meager army diet. Captured canned food, chocolate, cigarettes, and alcohol were the most coveted spoils. A captured German food warehouse or even the backpack of a dead enemy could provide delicacies for an entire platoon for several days. German chocolate and French cognac were especially prized. Trade between soldiers of different armies also flourished. American Chesterfield or Camel cigarettes were real currency on the black market. They could be exchanged with Soviet soldiers for captured watches, lighters, or even weapons. Soviet soldiers, in turn, could offer Makorka tobacco, or the famous second portion, an integral part of Lend-Lease supplies. American Spam canned meat was not very popular among Americans themselves, but it was highly valued in the Red Army. Parcels from home were another important source of food. A piece of homemade lard, a jar of honey, dried fruit. All this was not just food, but a message from peaceful life, a reminder of home and family. Receiving a parcel became a celebration for the whole platoon. Soldiers exchanged not only food, but also recipes. Americans taught Russians how to make peanut butter sandwiches, and Russians shared the secrets of making rich borscht from canned meat and whatever vegetables were available. This culinary exchange brought the Allies closer together. Sometimes very exotic items were exchanged. Soldiers who fought in Africa or the Pacific Islands tried local fruits and dishes. These gastronomic discoveries became the subject of stories and tales for the rest of their lives. This frontline commerce was regulated by its own unwritten laws. There were established exchange rates, and cheating was considered a serious offense. Honesty in these matters was highly valued. The availability of a variety of products depended heavily on the type of troops and the section of the front. Pilots and tankers ate much better than the infantry in the trenches. But even in the most difficult conditions, soldiers' ingenuity found a way to get something tasty. Do you think this kind of frontline commerce can be considered a manifestation of soldierly camaraderie? Or was it simply a necessity? In the next chapter, we will talk about how alcohol became both a medicine and a curse of frontline life. Alcohol played a special dual role in the war. On the one hand, it was a means of relieving stress, warming up, and disinfecting. On the other hand, it was a cause of disciplinary violations, carelessness, and senseless losses. In the Red Army, the most famous alcoholic tradition was Narkom's 100 grams. According to a decree of the State Defense Committee, every soldier on the front line was entitled to a daily ration of vodka. This measure was intended to boost morale and help soldiers cope with the tremendous psychological stress. Vodka was issued before an attack to take away the fear, or in the evening after a heavy battle. The norm was increased for tankers and pilots. However, attitudes towards this tradition were ambiguous. Many commanders believed that it dulled vigilance and led to unjustified losses. There was no centralized distribution of alcohol in the German army, but schnapps was an integral part of soldiers' daily life. It could be bought in officers' and soldiers' shops, received as a reward, or simply captured as a trophy in France or Ukraine. Schnapps was also used to prevent colds and as a warming agent. During the cold winters on the Eastern Front, a sip of strong alcohol could save you from frostbite, but abuse of it often led to tragedy. American and British soldiers received rum, whiskey, or beer. In the British Navy, a daily ration of rum was a centuries-old tradition. Alcohol was included in some rations and was issued on special occasions, such as Christmas. In addition to official supplies, soldiers of all armies were actively involved in moonshining. Anything that could ferment was used: sugar, grain, potatoes, fruit. The quality of such drinks was terrible, but in the conditions of the front, there was no choice. Alcohol was also used for medical purposes. It was used to disinfect wounds and given to the wounded as a painkiller. Alcohol was a valuable resource in any field hospital. A whole folklore developed around frontline alcohol. Countless stories and anecdotes told of how soldiers obtained, hid, and consumed alcohol. It was a forbidden but very important part of trench life. The history of alcohol in war shows how the same substance can be both a salvation and a poison. It is a constant reminder that in extreme conditions, the line between medicine and poison becomes very thin. Delivering hot food to the front lines was one of the most difficult and dangerous tasks. Smoke from field kitchens could reveal positions and attract artillery fire. Therefore, cooks and food delivery personnel had to show remarkable courage and ingenuity. The kitchen on wheels became a symbol of frontline food. This simple and reliable design, usually horse or motor-drawn, made it possible to cook lunch for an entire company. Soups and porridge were cooked in its cauldrons, and tea was brewed. The work of a cook in wartime was hard and dangerous. He had to obtain water and firewood under enemy fire, prepare food, and ensure its delivery to the trenches. Frontline cooks were held in high esteem among the soldiers. Thermoses were used to deliver food, large containers similar to backpacks that kept food hot for several hours. Food delivery men, or thermos carriers, made their way through the communication passages under the cover of night or during brief lulls in the fighting, risking their lives at every step. If the field kitchen could not get close to the front line, the soldiers had to cook for themselves. The main tool for this was an individual mess tin. It could be used to boil water, cook soup, and make porridge from concentrates. The mess tin was a multifunctional item. It was used as a bowl, a mug, a wash basin, and even as a helmet in emergencies. The lid of the mess tin often served as a frying pan on which biscuits or pieces of bacon could be fried. Each army had its own models of mess tins. The Soviet mess tin was oval in shape, while the German one was kidney-shaped. The American one consisted of two parts, which allowed two dishes to be cooked at the same time. Soldiers took great care of their mess tins. They cleaned them with sand until they shone, signed them, and protected them in every way possible. Losing a mess tin was a serious problem, because without it, a soldier would be unable to cook hot food for himself. The history of field kitchens and soldiers' mess tins is a story of the everyday heroism of the unsung heroes of war. It reminds us that behind every attack and every maneuver was a complex supply system on which the lives of thousands of people depended. The soldiers' ration included foods whose value was measured not only in calories. Chocolate and cigarettes were both an antidepressant and currency for soldiers, as well as a symbol of belonging to their own. Their role in maintaining morale cannot be overestimated. Chocolate was included in the rations of all armies, especially in the rations for pilots and tankers. It provided a quick energy boost, was compact, and did not spoil. Hershey's Tropical Bar American chocolate was specially designed not to melt in hot climates. For an infantryman, a bar of chocolate was a real treat, a small celebration. It was shared with comrades to prolong the pleasure. Chocolate was the best gift for a wounded soldier in a hospital or for a child in a liberated city. Cigarettes were an even more important part of trench life. In conditions of constant stress and anticipation of attack, smoking became a ritual that helped soldiers calm down and collect their thoughts. Smoking together brought comrades closer. The shortage of tobacco was acutely felt. Soldiers smoked hand-rolled cigarettes made from shag tobacco, using scraps of newspaper. Cigarette butts, or bulls, were never thrown away. They could be gutted and used for a new hand-rolled cigarette. American cigarettes in bright packs were the object of envy and the main unit of exchange. Their value was understood without words by any soldier in any army. Offering a cigarette was a sign of trust and goodwill. The command understood the importance of tobacco supplies. General John Pershing said, "You ask what we need to win, I will answer, we need tobacco and bullets." Cigarettes were included in standard rations and delivered to the front lines along with ammunition. Even non-smoking soldiers tried to get their share of cigarettes. They could always be exchanged profitably for other products or useful items. A pack of Camels could cost a can of stew or a pair of warm socks. Chocolate and cigarettes were more than just food. They were symbols of the normal, peaceful life that soldiers were deprived of. Small pleasures that helped them remain human in inhuman conditions. Food in war was not just fuel for the body. The tastes and smells of frontline food were forever etched in the memory of those who went through this ordeal. For many veterans, the taste of simple rye bread or American canned meat became a symbol of an entire era. Many dishes, born of soldiers' ingenuity, entered civilian cuisine after the war. Various versions of soups and porridges made from concentrates, recipes using stewed meat. All this was the legacy of frontline life. The memory of Lend-Lease products became part of the cultural code of the post-war generation in the USSR. The words second front or Spam became synonymous with American corned beef for a long time. When veterans met after the war, they often recalled not only the battles and skirmishes, but also how they shared their last piece of bread or cooked soup from nettles. These shared gastronomic memories united them no less than the memory of joint attacks. Soldiers' rations from different countries have become objects of collection and study. Modern reenactors and historians are trying to recreate wartime rations to better understand the daily life of soldiers. Studying this topic shows how much nutrition affects the combat effectiveness and morale of the Army. The experience of World War II formed the basis for the development of modern individual rations, which take into account not only calorie content, but also the taste of the food. The history of soldiers' food is a story of survival and humanity. It proves that even in the most terrible conditions, people strive not only to survive, but to preserve their dignity, finding joy in simple things. This memory of taste is an important reminder of the price that had to be paid for victory. Behind every piece of bread eaten and every cup of tea drunk lay hard work, risk, and an unyielding will to live. We have examined only a small part of the tricks that help soldiers survive the hell of World War II. Behind each of these inventions, from homemade heaters to gathering wild herbs, lies not only ingenuity, but also an unyielding will to live. These stories show that the human spirit is capable of adapting to any conditions, even the most unimaginable ones. War is a tragedy, but it also sometimes reveals the best qualities in people: mutual aid, ingenuity, and incredible resilience. The experiences of soldiers of that time are a harsh lesson in how important it is to appreciate peace and the simple things that seem like real treasures in the trenches. Please suggest topics for future videos that you would like to see on our channel in the comments. What else about military life interests you? Hygiene, medicine, uniforms, and equipment. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss new episodes.